So that was sort of my rock bottom. It was a real awakening, an identity crisis where I realized I didn't want to do this job anymore as a professional fighter. When we apply that to the whole idea of quantum science and the whole idea that we affect our reality based on our expectation and our observation, and then we literally program that reality into our nervous system, into our biology by visualizing it. The good news and the bad news is the only way to really get the most from visualization is practice, regular practice.
The power you seek lies within you, as we are each infinite beings living a human experience. The truth of who and what we are has been hidden from us until now. Awaken, my friends, to this new reality that we are in fact creating everything through the power and the gift of our wonderful imagination. Join me as I unlock the secrets of our past and reveal the truth that has been clouded in this veil we call life. What reality will you choose to create today? The choice is yours. Welcome, my friends, to My Reality Practice. Welcome, everybody, and thanks for joining me today on the Reality Practice podcast. I'm your host, Joey Kramer, and today's guest is Ricky Goodall. Ricky is known as the Shamanic Warrior, and he embraces the idea that he is not really Ricky Goodall, but is in fact God, the creator and conscious universe, and is simply a manifestation of his higher self pretending to be Ricky Goodall. He empowers brave leaders to discover and become their true, authentic higher selves in order to create together with the collective a heavenly world here on earth. So now, without further delay, let's welcome my friend and my brother, Ricky Goodall, to the show. Welcome, buddy. How are you doing?
Yeah, thanks, Joey. Thanks for having me. I'm really grateful to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into this with you because we've spoken many times before, and we're connected, on a lot of different ways as far as beliefs and kind of our path, our journey. And I really wanted to bring you on to share your journey and to kind of share what you do and how you do it, what's gotten you to this point, what now has made you become the Shamanic Warrior, and you're teaching other men, teaching people around the world. But, you really like to focus on masculinity and helping men, become their true divine masculine, and I think feminine too, because we're a little bit of both, right? So with that being said, let's get right into it. Where did this spiritual journey begin for you?
Yeah, I used to say that my spiritual journey started in around 2012, but really it started when I was a teenager and I started practicing karate. And I remember my karate teacher teaching us meditation. And at the time, I didn't really understand what meditation was, but what he was teaching me to do was to visualize and imagine the outcome that I wanted in my karate practice so that I could create the outcome and the reality that I wanted to create. And I started studying samurai and ninjas and these types of things, and then eventually became a professional mixed martial arts fighter in my 20s. And so in 2012, I was knocked out really badly in my MMA career. And I was out for 2 minutes straight and got up. And for the next 30 minutes, I was basically, I don't remember what happened. I did an interview with the post-fight announcer. I did an interview outside of the cage. I was wheeled out in a stretcher to an ambulance. And to this day, I don't remember any of it. So that was sort of my rock bottom. It was a real awakening, an identity crisis where I realized I didn't want to do this job anymore as a professional fighter, even though I fought 5 more times after that competition. And I realized I didn't want to do it anymore. So I had this identity crisis and started feeling very insecure and controlling in my relationship and jealous and manipulative, and started going down this spiritual journey to discover why. And that's really how it all started. So that was in 2012. And in April 2012, so it's been almost 10 years that I've been actively on this spiritual path. Although I was introduced to the movie The Secret in 2006, And that was when I was homeless and jobless. And within a year, I became an MMA fighter. So it's really, I mean, the journey, you know, it starts when I was born, I think, as it does for all of us. And it consciously started in my 20s, but I think it started at a very young age.
That's that's such an awesome journey. I mean, it getting knocked out and losing consciousness, all of that obviously would suck. But you know, it's part of your journey, part of where you've been. I really respect, you know, what you've done, you know, early on and now at this point. You know, you said your sensei taught you how to visualize the outcome of what you wanted in a fight. You know, how important is that, the visualization process in creating the outcomes we want? I talk about it a lot, but what's your perspective as far as visualization? How did that enhance your ability to create reality?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because in my mixed martial arts career, I started my career using a lot of visualization, but then as things progressed, I kind of fell away from it. But then I since have discovered and rediscovered the importance of it. And in 1984, the Russians did some research on some Olympic athletes, and they recognized that the Olympic athletes who trained 100% of the time performed less efficiently than the ones who only trained 25% of the time and spent 75% of their time visualizing. They actually proved that Olympic athletes outperformed other athletes, even though they only trained about 1/4 of the time. They outperformed them just through visualization. They did some studies and recognized that the motor cortex of the brain and the nervous system lit up the same way as if the athletes were actually performing the tasks when they were just visualizing. So it's not, we hear about it in the spiritual community and we hear about visualization, how it can manifest our reality. But this literally happens on a neurological and a biological level. It's scientifically proven. So when we apply that to the whole idea of quantum science and the whole idea that we affect our reality based on our expectation and our observation, and then we literally program that reality into our nervous system, into our biology by visualizing it, then it's difficult to argue the fact that it works.
That's just amazing and mind-blowing. You know, we've all, most of us have heard, especially if we grew up playing sports and everything. I know for me, you know, the coaches would always, on the bus to a football game, would always, you know, take 5 minutes quiet time, visualize the play. You know, for me, I was a linebacker, so I visualized jumping and catching the interception, you know, or being in the right spot at the right time to make the tackle. And I think if that was promoted more, just that idea that this is a real thing, you know, the majority of what we believe to be real isn't real. And like you said, 75% of the athletes weren't training, and 75% of the time they were still creating and building their body. I know I do that in my, like, just keeping my body the way I want it to look. You know, I envision who I believe I am, you know, muscles, athletic, whatever you want it to be. And somehow I continue to look this way without doing much work. So, you know, I believe completely in that idea that you can visualize to an extent to create whatever it is we want, you know. As far as you mentioned, you know, you forget a lot, or often you forget about that idea of visualization, the power of it. And I think I've come across that. That happens to me often, you know, where I think we get so caught up in everything's going right. We're building this, we're designing and creating that. We kind of forget a lot of times the importance of visualizing. So I find myself constantly going back to, it's like, why aren't things playing out the way I want them to? And it's like, I forgot I haven't been doing specific visualization meditations for the past month or whatever. And it's like, once you start to remind yourself, oh yeah, that's important, then it kind of falls back in. And for me, it's just kind of a repetitive, I get better and better at it. But, you know, what would you recommend as far as people doing to become better at visualizing as far as practicing, getting in that habit of it? Because it's easy with life. When things are going well, we kind of forget the things that got us to that point in the first place, and we kind of get on cruise control. So what would you say, what's a good technique or two that people can use to really remember to practice what we preach?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's kind of the blessing and the curse, right? Like, I mean, brushing your teeth works really well until you stop. And then when you stop, it doesn't work anymore. So it's not the kind of thing that you can just, you can't brush your teeth 10 times in one day and then not brush your teeth for the next week. It doesn't work that way, right? So the good news and the bad news is the only way to really get the most from visualization is practice, regular practice, whether it's a daily practice or even every couple of days or when necessary. I find myself, like you said, when things are flowing, sometimes it's easy for me to let go of the practice. And then I hit a roadblock and I'm like, God damn it. I wasn't setting intentions. I wasn't practicing gratitude. I wasn't praying. I wasn't, so for me, visualization is, sometimes I just visualize, but really visualization is a byproduct of a lot of the other things I might be doing. So when I'm playing music, I'm visualizing myself performing music on stage. When I'm praying, I'm visualizing as if I have what I'm asking for. If I'm writing a gratitude list for the things that I have and the things that I want, I'm visualizing as if I have those things. Sometimes for me, I like to write letters to myself from the future. This is one of my favorite techniques. So writing a letter to myself from the future as if that reality has already manifested.
I love that idea, that concept. I too have done that over the past couple years. For me, one of the struggles I dealt with early on, and I've dealt with most of my life, was waking up early. I hated waking up early, right? I don't know why. I was a late night person, right? People tell themselves whatever they want to believe. I still like staying up late, but I love getting up early now. It's that peace, that calm, that quietness, that the world's still sleeping, and yet I'm up before the sun. And I did all that by writing myself a letter, more or less. I scripted out my ideal morning, from the moment I wake up, and I wrote it down. What do I do? How do I feel? What's it, all the senses that come into it. And I put that and wrote out probably a 3-4 page, description vividly of what my morning would look like. And literally ever since I did that, I love getting up in the mornings now. It's like the earlier, the better. Sometimes it's 4 a.m., sometimes it's 5 a.m., but it definitely has a certain power over our subconscious mind. That's that act of writing it out, the intention, like Neville Goddard preaches or preached, living in the end. It sounds like a lot of what you're doing during your meditations and visualizations is you're living in the end. You're putting yourself there visually and you're attracting it to you. Is that basically what you're doing?
Yeah, Rich Litvin, a coach I respect, calls it a come from goal. It's not a place we're getting to, it's a place we're coming from. So it's a matter of living as if I am already doing that thing. And so speaking as if or writing as if, I think, is a powerful way to do that as well, because it's not only telling myself that it's going to happen, it's speaking as if it happened. So I'm creating that reality through my words, and my words are creating my reality.
I love that. I love it. One of my main mentors, coaches that I worked with for a few years, he always preached the importance of, when you're setting a goal, it's not about reaching that goal. It's not about achieving that goal, because then what? It's about the person you become that reaches that goal. You want to be a millionaire. You make $1 million, then what? But it's not about becoming a millionaire. It's about becoming the person and visualizing the person that is a millionaire. So what does a millionaire do? He gets up early, he works out, he takes care of his body, he has a routine, so on and so forth, that all of those little habits that a millionaire would do, that's the journey.
That's the whole process. It's not the reward is, yay, you got there, but it goes so much deeper, and it's the person you become in getting to and reaching that goal. So yeah. Let's shift gears a little bit and let's talk about how you became known as the Shamanic Warrior. What does that encompass? Who is the Shamanic Warrior?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked who is, because the concept of the Shamanic Warrior is really what we all are. We all have this warrior inside of us. In the way of the peaceful warrior, Socrates, the character, the teacher character, calls it the warrior. He says, Jesus was one of the greatest warriors, and the Buddha's a warrior, and Bruce Lee's a warrior, and these archetypes in history, these characters in history who have tamed the impulses, tamed their desires, their carnal desires, the desires of the body, and have become peaceful and present in their consciousness. So when I think of Shamanic Warrior, I think of a balance of fire and water. Shamanism, in my understanding, is very water-based. It's all about emotions, and it's all about flow, and it's all about peace and serenity. And then the warrior really has the archetype of fire, the archetype of explosion and strength and power and will and focus. And so the Shamanic Warrior is a concept of bringing those two opposites together, the fire, the warrior's fire, and the shaman's water, bringing those two things together, because fire can be really destructive when it's left on its own, but when we temper it with water, fire can become very powerful and very helpful. And likewise, water we can drown in the water if we're left on our own, but when we use the water in an intelligent way, then it can be really valuable for us as well. So the Shamanic Warrior is really a concept of the individual who has the courage to unbecome the false identity and unbecome the character that they have been showing up as in life, unconsciously since they were born, and answering the call of being who and what we really are. And so the Shamanic Warrior is also a label that needs to be let go of once the warrior is on the path, because any identity is a false identity. Because what we really are is without identity, it's without name, it's without understanding, it's without comprehension. So the Shamanic Warrior is an individual, and a male or female, it's an individual who is aware that the identity is the problem. And there's no problem, but if there was a problem, the identity would be the problem. And so when we can use the identity instead of the identity using us, instead of the ego using us, we can use the ego, then we become the nameless, formless nothingness that exists beyond the identity.
I love that answer. It's a kind of, it makes me think when you were speaking water-based versus fire-based and kind of the principles of the two, it brought to mind for me, kind of the feminine masculine. It sounds like the masculine is that fire, that focus, that burning desire, and the feminine is that water, that flowing, that creativity that we have to have. We can't create without the ambition. Without the ambition, we can't create. I mean, they play off each other, and if we get trapped in that ego of I'm this or I'm that versus I'm everything or I'm nothing, Dr. Dispenza talks about becoming nothing. When we become nothing, we become everything. So I guess that leads right into, the idea of raising your consciousness. You talk and you practice and, teach a lot of people around the world how to raise their consciousness. That's, I think, one of your big things, one of the big aspects of what you teach. What is, in your view, what is the idea, what is the concept, one, of raising your consciousness, and how can we do it?
Yeah. I used to think raising my consciousness was going from here up to this high place. So I used to think it was, but really, if I imagine I'm holding an elastic band right now, and if I pull that elastic band, really pull it way down there, that's where my consciousness is. It's at the bottom of the elastic band. So really raising my consciousness is actually just coming back up to where I just naturally am. It's not a raising. I am here. This is the false identity. So the elastic band being pulled down, the heaviness, the shame, the guilt, the trauma, the pain, the unhealed past, the unforgiven relationships, the resentments that I have toward myself and others, that's the density that keeps me at a lower consciousness. When I release all of that, I don't raise to this high level where I become, above others or above, human life. I actually just come back to being how I came into this life, which was pure, without opinion, without perspective, without judgment, without belief, without ideas. A child doesn't know anything. A child doesn't know the color red. Child doesn't.
Fear of, I think we're born with what? The fear of falling and the fear of loud noises, and that's everything else is programmed into us.
Right. So the raising of the consciousness is really the it's not really a raising. I mean, it is. That's the byproduct of what's happening, but it's really an unbecoming of the lower consciousness. And when we unbecome the lower consciousness, then the raising just is a natural progression. It's like holding a balloon under the water. What holds the balloon under the water but your resistance? You're forcing the balloon to be underwater. But if you let go of the resistance, the balloon just floats up. There's no effort for the balloon to float up, because that's what the balloon is supposed to do. We're supposed to be at a higher consciousness, supposed to. There's no supposed to in reality either, but that's the word I'm choosing. We're our natural state is high consciousness. But I think that we're playing this game of low consciousness to enjoy the beauty of high consciousness again.
I love that answer. The idea of the game of forgetting. That's what we're here to do. It's forget it all and remember who we are in the process, and the pain, the struggles, the trauma, all of these things that our ego creates for us. It's all about releasing that ego, releasing all of those traumas. I talk a lot about it, work with my clients on, regarding healing from the stories we tell ourselves. Very similar, to what you're speaking of in terms of releasing those traumas, releasing all the bullshit that is bringing us down on that rubber band because of these false beliefs, the imaginary ideas that we have that are holding us back. But when you rewrite those beliefs, when you let go of them and that rubber band snaps back up, I love that analogy there. It's all about just coming back to present, where we came when we entered in. You're right. There is no I'm higher than you. I'm higher consciousness. I'm better than you. It's just becoming our natural God-given Christ within state, another thing I really love that you work with people on and you talk a lot about is judgment and how it plays a role, in people's awakening. How do we remove that judgment? How much does judgment actually pull that rubber band down and keep us here?
Yeah, judgment's interesting. I mean, I was a really judgmental person most of my life. I mean, we're all judgmental. I'm judging the food I eat. I'm judging whether I'm going to take a right or a left. And I guess that's where the difference between discernment and judgment. I'm discerning whether I take a right or a left, or I'm discerning whether I stop or go through a stop sign. But judgment is a little different. And the tricky thing about judgment, when we I was going to say understand, but when we comprehend or somewhat comprehend quantum science, and because no one understands quantum science, that's the whole thing. But when we kind of comprehend the idea of quantum science, and we also understand judgment from a spiritual perspective, the danger in it is that everything is a self-judgment. Everything and everyone that I judge is a self-judgment. When I judge someone for being fat, it's because there's a part of me that still, judges myself for being fat, or maybe judged myself for being fat and haven't healed from it. If I judge somebody for being ugly, or I judge somebody for being stupid, or I judge somebody for being corrupt, or if I judge somebody for being, what evil, whatever it might be, those judgments are inherently a self-judgment. That's to some degree. Now, the danger is when I judge my reality, I influence it to perpetuate. So in other words, if I say, oh, the world's going to hell, well, then I'm now creating that world. So not only am I judging my observation based on my subconscious filters, which are actually just self-judgments, but I'm also further creating that world by judging it as such, and especially if I say it out loud. So that's why my whole thing is like, I believe that we're moving toward heaven on earth. Where you're going is up to you.
Right.
We're going there in my reality, but in your reality, I don't know where you're going, man. I don't know.
Yeah,
we don't know, right? We don't know.
Same frequency. Even if that frequency's off on the dial just 1 degree, then my course is an entirely different course in my perception of it. But in your perception, I'm still the same person joining you on this magical ride to heaven on earth. And we all think that's one of the beautiful gifts we were given that we're having to learn and remember is everybody is creating their own individual universe right within them. And what one person's doing in your eyes, they're not actually doing that in their eyes because they're creating and living an entirely different reality that may or may not be present. Thank you, quantum physics, for completely confusing us, but giving us peace in that
freedom.
Knowing that freedom. Quantum physics gives us freedom from judgment if we really kind of dive in and look at it. I love what you said, discernment, when it comes to judgment, because that's something I've really worked on the last year is stopping, trying to stop judging anything, everything, and start just seeing that polarity of it's either right or left. It's either up or down. It's black or white. There's no wrong between any of them. There's no good. There's no evil. There's only the discernment between the two. And if we can look at it in that way, as opposed to judging it, evil being evil, good being good, I think that brings us closer to letting that band back up and being present. What with the current situation in the world.
I appreciate your choice of words.
I'm just, I honestly, I speak that way because what you said was so powerful just a few minutes ago, and the idea that what we believe, we create. What we say, we're creating. So if you think there's evil in the world, we're creating more evil out of our subconscious mind. So how would you help people as we're going through this time in our evolution? We can see things for being evil. We can see things for being corrupt. We can see all that we want in the world that isn't there, right? That coming from lack. I want to create heaven on earth, but we still live in this hell, here that where there's evil, there's this and that. How would you recommend people disassociate from the two? Because it took me a while, and I worked with my mentor on this idea of evil. There is no evil. There's only the perception of evil. But I still find myself getting angry because I want things to change faster and I want things to be different. So I still find myself at times perpetuating that evil thought because I see it ending at some point. So just in the thought of the evil's there and it will end, it's continuing to create that, never-ending evil. It's a pendulum. We're swinging on one side or the other. And it's just, how would you recommend, if you could, to people to kind of, with what we're going through right now, to view things in a different light, I guess?
Yeah. Yeah, so I'll tell you a really personal story. When I was in my mixed martial arts fighting career, I used to use heavy drugs, cocaine, ecstasy, alcohol. And about 4 years after I retired, one of my friends who was a cocaine dealer got caught, went to jail, did some time in the penitentiary. And we went out when he finally got out. He was only allowed to be around people who didn't have a criminal record, and I didn't have a criminal record. So we went out. Yeah, we went out and hung out and had a chat. And when I was sitting there, I just realized that there was no part of me that was judging him for being in jail, for being a drug dealer, because I know that his choices are the result of his program. The way that all of the things that he's done in his life are the result of his programming. I can see the light inside of him when I'm around him. I can feel the light from him. I can feel the love. He's been such a good person to me in a way besides the drugs, in lots of different ways. And I don't use any drugs anymore. I don't have that. I don't have that commonality with him anymore. So evil is a judgment, right? Evil is a judgment. So if I say there are evil people in the world, your wish is my command. What there are in the world is there are people at varying degrees of healing. And some people have been so damaged that their nervous system, I read an analogy about this once, that when you excite the nervous system to such an incredible, extraordinary degree, the neurons, they actually get blown right out. And so the ability for the individual to feel compassion is almost impossible. Through traditional, and I say traditional, what I really mean is conventional medicine, like antidepressants, antipsychotics, etc., and conventional psychology and psychiatry, that person may never heal. Let's say somebody that's been and I apologize for the graphic explanation, but somebody that's been gang raped, or somebody that's in sex slavery, or somebody that's seen somebody in these crazy war countries that have seen just mind-boggling things. Their nervous system has been so overwhelmed and so stimulated that their ability to have compassion is almost non-existent. They almost can't. They just don't have the neurological chemistry to be able to have compassion. The only thing that actually gives them a feeling anymore is actually stuff like what happened to them. That's the only thing that can give them a feeling. So they unconsciously chase what will give them a feeling now. Now, unfortunately, the only thing that gives them feeling is violence and intense. And I have family members who will only watch really scary television shows and really scary movies because of how much trauma they've been through in their life, severe trauma. And so that's the only thing that can give them a real feeling of being alive.
That endorphin rush, or firing the neurons. They don't.
Right.
I've people with sexual addiction.
Same thing. Yeah.
It gets progressively worse. Well, hell, alcoholism, drug abuse,
any of it. Yeah. We chase the high.
Yeah. Once you kind of hit flatline, then you need something more. And it's always taking it a step further and further, because we're, in a sense, we're killing those neural pathways. We're deadening them. We're numbing them to where they can't function like they're supposed to normally. And they're only triggered by violence, by evil, by the perception of that.
So the second part of that is our system, our medical system is not designed using conventional methods to help a person heal from that. However, if that person was to go through a rigorous detoxification plan, if they were to potentially, this isn't for everyone, but if they were to use some plant medicines or go through some really powerful shamanic ceremonies, or if they were able to work with some really supernatural healers, and some of you watching this may not have ever experienced anything supernatural with a healer before. I have, thank God, I've been able to experience some really supernatural, extraordinary, miraculous experiences, not just because of the medicines, but because of the healer. And because some of these healers have been given certain teachings and given certain tools that they share with people through healing experiences, where the nervous system can be repaired. and the heart can open again, and the heart can begin to feel again. So I think that when it comes to these, so-called evil people, or the people that have not healed, then what we'll need to see in the world, and what we will see, I believe, is a revolution and a transformation in healing to such a degree that a rising tide raises all ships. There are Mayan prophecies, Hopi prophecies, Christian prophecies, Jewish prophecies, Hindu prophecies, Egyptian prophecies, talking about this time. And in this time, the world splits. And some people, unfortunately, finish the old paradigm, whether they die or whatever you want to call it. They finish, and maybe they come back. If you believe in reincarnation, maybe they come back in the new world, or maybe they don't. I don't know. But I believe that what we will see is a rising of consciousness so profound that everyone's consciousness raises. So nobody can escape the rising light. So even the most sick, sadistic, evil, twisted, broken, blah, whatever judgments you want to use, those people get to have the gift too, because they are victims of their circumstances. They are not judged in the eyes of God, in my opinion, because God's the one that put the evil inside of them in the first place. Who created your childhood? I mean, you could say, I created my childhood, so I could, and I agree too. I created my childhood, but not consciously. Me as a higher power created my childhood so that I could experience the gifts of awareness and wisdom and understanding and comprehension and truth and love. But who actually created that? Well, it had to be a higher power. It had to be a higher intelligence. So how could God judge me for my evil if God put it inside of me? So then all of those people have to have an invitation too. Now, whether it's just like you get an invitation to a party, I give you an invitation. You don't have to come.
Right. Yeah.
Because you have free will. And
right.
Maybe if they don't come, well, then maybe they don't make it to the upgrade. The old software doesn't make it through the upgrade process. And so whatever happens, but everyone gets an invitation. So anyone who's willing to be redeemed, who's willing to open their heart, who's willing to forgive, who's willing to love, who's willing to accept, and willing to do the work will have an invitation to this new world.
This is how we're on the same wavelength here right now, because that just literally flowed right into the next question. But I want to wrap this one up real quick. I want to get into ayahuasca in a minute, but where you went with that was awesome, because the way I see it, and tell me if you agree, kind of what you were just saying, is the people that are playing this evil role, that's simply a way for us to evolve. They're not doing anything wrong necessarily. We all came here and agreed upon our certain roles and what we needed to do in order to trigger us. The people that we believe are doing horrible things in our perception, they're only just playing the roles that we assign them. They raised their hand, said, I'll do that. I'll do that horrible thing so that you can understand compassion, forgiveness, and love, versus, and if you can't learn that, if you don't learn that lesson, maybe you're right. When we shift, when we split, those that can understand the compassion, forgiveness, and love, even for the most heinous perceived evil, it unlocks that doorway for us, that new earth. And if they choose, they too can go. Because like you said, only God can judge. God created it. God created that for a specific reason. So I feel like it's all part of the plan. We just don't understand the plan. The majority of people don't understand the plan. So it's an idea of, we just have to really go back down deep and learn that we're all one, and that the projection that we're creating of evil is simply there to trigger us, to evolve, to awaken that new light so that we can split. We'll go here, some will go here. But all in all, it's still a perfect plan, right? We all are going to go somewhere. And if it's our time to go to the new earth, great. If it's our time to go back and repeat, like Law 1 says, go back and repeat another 75,000 year cycle, then, I've always associated it with like grades, levels of grades, in school. Like you're in 12th grade, we're getting ready to graduate to the new earth. How can you feel bad, or how can you judge a sophomore or a freshman that's just they're not ready to graduate yet? It's not their fault. That's just where they are on their timeline. So the freshman, the sophomore, the junior, they're going to have to go back and repeat it just because that's where they're at this point in evolution. And it's nothing they've done wrong. They just they're not ready to graduate yet. So I look at it that way, and that really helps me not to judge others and to laugh about things a lot more, to see things that trigger me, realizing that they're just there. They're there to trigger me. How I react to them is what will continue that energy, either going on this side of the pendulum or that side of the pendulum. So, I wanted to ask you about ayahuasca and how the role it's played in you and your awakening and your discovering your true powers, your healing, of your traumas, not just this life, but other lives. Tell me a little bit about it, because I'm planning 100% to get down to Mexico or Costa Rica this fall. That's like on my goals list, is I'm coming down to do an ayahuasca retreat at some point this year. So I'd love to hear some of your experiences with it, because you've done quite a handful of sessions and treatments. So would you mind sharing some of those with us and kind of the impact that they had on you?
Yeah. So my first time experiencing ayahuasca was in May of 2016. And all of my most profound experiences were in Cusco, Peru. That's the king of ayahuasca, in my opinion, or the queen of ayahuasca, in my opinion. And I encourage anyone who really wants to experience the full experience of ayahuasca to go to Peru if possible. 7 of my ayahuasca ceremonies were in Peru, and 4 were in Costa Rica, and 2 were in Nova Scotia, Canada. And so the first time I went, is profound healing. At that time, I had been through 50 DMT ceremonies before ayahuasca, 50 DMT experiences, not all ceremonies, and a few dozen psilocybin mushroom experiences. And when I went to Peru and experienced the ayahuasca, it was a profoundly different experience than any of the others. In the first ceremony, my very first ayahuasca ceremony ever, nothing happened except the words "nurture the roots" flashed across my consciousness.
Nurture the what?
Nurture the roots.
The roots. Okay.
Before I got there, I dieted for 2 weeks. So no alcohol, no red meat, no pork, no chocolate, no coffee, no cannabis, no sex, no masturbation, no processed foods, no sugar, for 2 weeks straight to cleanse. And then I get there and I drink ayahuasca, nothing happens. I was pissed.
Right? So, it's like you got a bad dose? What the hell?
I was so angry. I thought I got ripped off. So I woke up the next day and we had a little reflection the next morning. And I talked to the organizer, whose name is Angel. And I told him what happened. And the shaman was sitting there with him. And he translated for the shaman. And the shaman said something back. And then the organizer, Angel, said, the shaman says that Mother Ayahuasca is preparing you for tonight's ceremony. She doesn't always give you what you want. She gives you what you need. But it's very important that you use respectful language when you talk about Mother Ayahuasca, because she's always listening. I can't, whatever. So I go to my room, I write a letter, I go up to the mountain, and I read this letter to Mother Ayahuasca, telling her that I came to see something spectacular. And I bury it in the mountain behind the retreat center. So that night, I drink the ayahuasca, and within minutes, I'm completely gone. My whole consciousness is blasted off, and all of these little beings are in front of me, and they're like, "You better get on your hands and knees and surrender, or else this is going to go really badly for you." It's like, oh no! And so I'm on my hands and knees, and I'm surrendering, and then there's this voice whispering in my ear, and I realize that it's God, and it's saying, "Look at yourself. Don't you recognize what you are?" And I look down, and I'm the Big Bang, and then I'm rock and elements and the most basic forms of life. And then I continue to evolve, and then I become soil, then I become vegetation, then I become like amphibious creature, and then I become primate, and then I become human, and I continue to evolve from there. And I become an angel, and I become all these higher dimensional beings. And there are all these angels around me, and they have their hands in my chest, and they say, you have to learn to heal yourself before you can walk amongst the angels. So all the while this is happening, I'm throwing up and throwing up and throwing up and throwing up. And then the last 2 hours, I've got diarrhea. I'm on the toilet, throwing up in a bucket at the same time. And I was supposed to do a third ceremony, but I was too wiped. I didn't have the energy to. So I went back to Peru 5 months later, and always felt like I didn't quite get what I needed. And so in the first ceremony, again, nothing happened. So on my fifth ceremony, I asked them to give me enough ayahuasca so I never have to take ayahuasca ever again. So they gave me a cup about this big. Most people get about this much. They gave me a big cup, and I drank the ayahuasca. And the first thing that happened was I disappeared. There was no more Ricky Goodall. I was in infinite blackness. I thought I died and gone to hell. I was terrified. Oh my God, what is this? Where am I? Where am I? There was no response. Oh my God, I was so scared. I didn't know who I was, but I didn't know I was in Peru. I didn't know I was taking ayahuasca. I was begging, please, where am I? What's wrong? What's wrong? This voice says. And it's Mother Ayahuasca, and she has this humor behind her voice. She says, what's wrong? I said, what is this? Where am I? Where am I? I want to go home, but I don't even know where home is. She says, what's wrong? I thought you wanted to know what it feels like to be God. She said, I thought you want to know what it feels like to be the creator. She said, don't you recognize at this level of your consciousness, you're all there is. There's nothing else for you to experience here. She said, don't you recognize you created this life as Ricky Goodall to give yourself a vacation away from being all there is, all there ever was, and all there ever will be. So don't you recognize that all of the suffering you've ever experienced in your life is a gift compared to the infinite nothingness you experience here? The ancient people never bow down out of fear of their creator. They bow down out of compassion. Thank you for this gift of life. Thank you for this gift of duality. Thank you for this gift of suffering and illusion and separation and relationship, because without it, you're alone forever.
That is amazing and beautiful. That is so cool. You literally, I'm on like the edge of my seat listening to that. That was freaking cool. That I think it was your second time you said, I wrote it down. You literally went through the journey of existence, of the densities. It sounds like you started out from the Big Bang to that first density. You're just rock. Your fire, your wind, your air, your water. And then you moved into the rock and the soil. And then you became, second density with plants and simple organisms. And then you got to watch yourself transition up all the way to what is said to be, 6th, 7th density, where you're literally a collective of just angelic, you're just light. You're just there observing, all knowing, all seeing, all being. And that's phenomenal. I look forward to my first experience in doing that. And I can't wait to get down. 100% sounds like I got to go to Peru. So we need to set something up.
Yeah. It's funny. The organizer I told you about my first trip to Peru, he's actually a shaman as well. He's been my mentor over the last 6 years, and he and I have hosted ayahuasca retreats in Nova Scotia, and I've been there now again a third time when I did a San Pedro ceremony with him as well. But yeah, very, very powerful. This family has been doing this work for 50 generations of shamans.
Wow, that's just fascinating. We're getting close to the end. I got one last I wanted to touch on one last thing, and then we'll wrap it up here.
Sure.
But you're living in Tulum now. Is that correct?
Yeah.
On a personal note, I'll be down there third week of February in Playa.
Nice.
So
Cool.
I definitely want to meet up and hang. So let's schedule some time. I've yet to go see Tulum and the ruins. I know you've gone and you've seen quite a few ruins down in Mexico since you've been there. There's a book, I'm trying to think, Is it Vadim Zealand? I'm thinking it is. I read it like 6 months ago, and he goes around to all of the sacred spots in Mexico, and he does like a circle outward, started in one temple, and he had to go around in a circle outwards to all these different temple ruins, and he had to do certain rituals he was told to do, and he had to bury certain crystals and all sorts of stuff in order to save the world and everything. The book is just fascinating. So what kind of experiences have you had traveling to some of these ancient sites that we still don't know what they were used for necessarily, but we know that there's so much power and energy in these sacred places, and I can't wait to get there. But what is your experience if throughout visiting these?
Yeah, well, the most recent one, I was on Isla Mujeres, which is a little island outside of Cancun. It means the island of women. And there are Mayan ruins on the island dedicated to the goddess Ixchel. She's the goddess of fertility and rain, and she's a manifestation of the mother. And so my partner Julia and I were there on Christmas Day and performed a sunrise ritual and a sunset ritual. And it was just an incredibly powerful, beautiful experience. And I don't really want to create an expectation for anyone, but I can say that if anyone has any types of energy healing practices or magic practices or Tai Chi practices, practicing those types of things, in my experience, at these sites is exceptionally amplified. Exceptionally amplified. I think that and like Chichen Itza, for example, El Castillo, which is here at just a few hours away, the pyramid, the big pyramid, it's the biggest pyramid, one of the biggest pyramids in Mexico. There are two more pyramids inside of that one, much, much older pyramids that the government won't let people study them. I talked to one researcher. He says that the innermost pyramid could be 10,000 years old or older, way older than the Mayans.
Right.
These are pre-Mayan civilization. In fact, there are multiple levels of building. You can tell which build is the Mayan because they build in a certain way. But then there are more ancient megalithic style building, which is so perfect that technology today can't even begin to explain how it was done.
Yeah.
So not only are these sites, they're massive and they're beautiful and they're very mysterious, but they're built in such a way that the technology is not even available well, we don't think it's available on the planet. And so it expands your consciousness just by seeing it. Like, for example, the big pyramid, when you stand at the bottom of it, you can clap. And at the top of the pyramid, you'll hear the noise of a bird. Quack. You go, quack, and it quacks back at you when you clap your hand. And it's a very specific bird out of like millions of species of birds. It's a very specific bird that quacks back at you. Twice a year, this pyramid on the equinoxes, the spring equinox and the fall equinox, as the sun is setting, it looks like there's a snake descending down the pyramid.
Wow.
Only on those 2 days a year.
Yeah, there's so much still unknown about pyramids in general, but all of that architecture, like you said, I've done so much research on it, and some of the buildings, some of the structures they can't do, like you said, even with today's technology, they're cut so precise, like they're cut by lasers, and they come together in such a way that it's so unexplainable that it just is so fascinating. I mean, you're in a special, sacred place when you can see things like that cannot be explained, yet they're right there in front of your eyes. So I can't wait to get down there. This time, I haven't, the last few times I've been to Mexico, I've wanted to hit Tulum, Chichen Itza, some of the sites, and I just haven't had the opportunity. So this time around, I definitely am going to travel to them, at least get to one of them and do a meditation, whatever, and really, really open up to it. So thank you so much for sharing that. I'm excited. I guess it's time for the final question. And since this show's all about creating your own reality, I think I know what you're going to say, but I ask everybody the same thing. If at this exact moment you could create the perfect reality, anything you want that you can imagine, what would you create and why?
I mean, it sounds like a cop out, but I mean, world peace would be the thing. And the reason why is because I think that's our true reality. That's our true home, is world peace. But then in saying that, if I'm at peace, then I'm already there, because my reality will eventually reflect what I'm carrying inside of me. So what I would create is total peace inside of myself, so that I can share that peace with the world.
That's beautiful. And I truly believe it starts with us, you know, one person at a time, one soul at a time. After all, there is only you and there is only me. So
Right.
how can we create peace on earth? How can we create heaven on earth if we're not creating it within us first and foremost? Because there is nothing else to create.
That's right.
How can people find you? Where can they find you on Facebook? You know,
Yes. I mean, my YouTube channel is the best way to understand my content. I've got an audio book on there. It's just youtube.com/higher level potential, or just look up my name, Ricky Goodall. My website's just rickygoodall.com. And I have a Facebook page on Facebook as well, just facebook.com/Ricky Goodall.
Perfect. And I'll put links to everything in the comment box below, description box below for everybody. So you don't have to try and write that down or remember it. Any last words to the audience before we close?
I say that my mission is to inspire 1 billion people to dream as big as heaven on earth. So I think that's what I would say is, have the courage to dream big. Have the courage to imagine a life of total beauty and peace and bliss and happiness and oneness and unity. If we can have the courage to dream that big, then we can create it together.
Beautiful, beautiful. I am so blessed and grateful to call you a friend and to have you come on the show here. I thank you so much. And I want to thank everybody else for taking the time to join us today. If you like this interview, if it resonated with you, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, share the video with friends, family, your community. If you want to see more videos like this, more interviews, definitely check out the channel, Reality Practice on YouTube. And other than that, until next time, guys, thanks for watching. Stay blessed. And remember to always ask yourself, what reality are you choosing to create today? Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Joe.
See you, Ricky.